Welcome back. So I've just finished reading Other Voices, Other Tombs, which is a short story anthology of scary stories. So kind of just in the vein of a lot of the stuff I've been reading lately. As is typical with most anthologies, there were several stories that I really loved and several stories that I did not connect with at all. As such, I didn't technically read every story in its entirety, but I did at least give every story a couple pages or so to see if I was connecting with it and interested in it. So, my highlights from it, I really liked The Governess by, I can't read what I wrote here, I think it's Anya Alborn. This one was about a couple who has a young child and they get an app that's supposed to help with monitoring their baby in the other room. The wife has like anxiety and stuff, so it's supposed to help kind of calm that for her, and then spooky stuff starts happening with the app. It had a really good build up, and then the ending wasn't quite what I thought it should be to fulfill on all of the scary things it was promising, but conceptually it was so good that it was still a fairly good piece for me. The same thing happened with Comfortable Gods by Michael Wehunt. This one featured a couple who are on vacation, and their car didn't break down or anything, but they're at this kind of motel in the middle of nowhere because the husband started having mouth pains and needed to go to a dentist. The husband disappears for a really long time for this dentist appointment, and the wife can't get a hold of him, and then really creepy stuff starts happening. This one was a little bit more gory. There were things like ripping out teeth and other like bloody body horror kind of things going on that at times were a little bit on the side for me. And the ending, I didn't feel like quite carried out on what the events of the story were promising. So that was mildly disappointing, but it had a good build-up. And other than the gore almost being too much, I really enjoyed it. So there was that. We also had Red Rose, which I didn't technically finish. I finished most of it, but it was one where these teens are going off into the woods having like a senior drunk party kind of thing. Sort of a typical story that way. And then it's like the popular girl and her best friend, and the best friend ends up killing the popular girl and switching faces with her. And some of the gore that was involved in the face swapping just got to be too much for me. And I think I technically finished all the stuff where they like took off her face and then re-sewed on a new one and all of that. But I was having so much trouble accepting just the premise of the story being that, and like the grossness of the face swapping. I put the book down for days because I couldn't get back into it. And after that long, I was like, well, I clearly don't want to finish this story, so we'll just skip it. And then I was only like a couple pages to the end of that story anyways, as I was skipping past it, but I was like, it just wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth it to try. So I didn't finish that one. And then there was 3 Lanes Deep, which felt like a really relatable story at first. It talked about this brother and sister who are stuck in their car in the middle of this big old traffic jam, in the middle of a heat wave. Their car doesn't have air conditioning. They've been stuck there for hours. All of this build up, I was like, A, it's totally relatable, and B, I've totally been in very similar situations. I've never been stuck in traffic that long in a car in that situation, but I could picture it from times that I've just driven in a car without air conditioning, and it was building up so well. And then it went a little off the walls because the sister ended up needing to go to the bathroom, but there's just crowds of people everywhere, so where's she supposed to go? The brother remembers seeing this like camper, and he's like, oh, let's go back to the camper. They probably have a toilet on there that you can use. They go back, and then, spoilers, because this is where the story gets really weird, the lady who owns the camper was acting kind of creepy and weird, but the sister's just like, I just need to use the bathroom. So she goes in to use the bathroom. There's like a peephole in the bathroom, and there's this guy who's like tied up and bloodied and just hidden away inside this camper dying, and the sister's like freaking out about this. And like that in and of itself would have been an interesting story. Like, do you come out and tell the police? She hears her brother like coming in and the lady being all friendly with him, offering him a drink and stuff, and you're like, oh no, she's gonna drug the drink, she's gonna do the same to them. It's building up to that kind of suspense. And then it ends up being a monster story, because there's like this monster that comes down the road and starts stomping on people like Godzilla style and breaking down cars and stuff. And I was like, I feel like there were two separate stories here. The one with the creepy lady in the camper, and the one that's a monster story. And I feel like they should have been separated from each other, because it just felt like a little too much going on to have done both of those things in the one story. But again, the build up to it, sitting in the hot, sweaty car, so good. So good. Great atmosphere in that one. The next one that I wanted to talk about is Fly Away Little Fledgling. This one featured a lady who's doing like hospice care specifically for little kids who I assume have things like cancer and stuff that they're gonna die of. So it was like a really tragic story in that sense. A little frustrating in some ways, because the main character, while working in the hospice, which I'm sure to some degree is a feeling that you'd have working in a hospice, but it felt a little over the top, was always like, oh, it must be so horrible to be these kids, to know that your life's gonna end so soon, how can we ever give them anything worthwhile, kind of a feel. And I was just like, I don't know why you're doing this work if you feel like it's so pointless, as you seem to be talking about. And then it had some really creepy like ghost story atmosphere to it. The little girl that she's been like assigned to take care of is hearing this creepy coughing in the night, which turns out to be a ghost who had died there, who had like TB and thus the coughing and stuff. And so it had a really good atmosphere that way. I didn't really like the ending. It happens so much with scary stories for me, but I didn't like the ending. I won't spoil it in case some of that premise sounds interesting to you, and I've already spoiled some of the other stories, so I'll try to keep some of the stuff a mystery. But yeah, there was that one. And then probably my top 3 of the anthology, we had Urban Moon, A Circle That Ever Returneth, and Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark was another one with a lot of atmosphere that I could relate to. It's about a teenage girl who's gotten drunk and is driving home in the snow. Other than the getting drunk part, I've totally driven home in snowstorms before. Terrifying stuff. So just the atmosphere of describing her driving around in the snow was awful and terrifying. And then she starts seeing this shadow in the dark that seems like it's chasing her. I was so freaked out. So freaked out. And then this one had a twist too, and I was not seeing that twist coming, and so I'm not going to spoil it, but it was so good. It was a great bookend to the book, because it was the last story in the anthology, and I was like, that was a great one to end on. I really enjoyed that. And then we have Urban Moon, which was a really interesting one. It was kind of a darker side of human life one. The main character had been raped and things, so there was some of the consequences and fallout that she has to deal with from that, but also had a really interesting writing style, because the characters keep being described as like birds. So it'll talk about them like preening to get ready to go out for the night, things like that. And I really loved kind of that mixing in of styles where they're clearly people, but they clearly have these bird-like things too. Their jackets are described kind of like their downy coats and stuff, and it was a really interesting read. I really enjoyed the style of that one, and I really think I will probably pick up more Mercedes Yardley stuff after that and see if her other stuff has kind of that interesting supernatural animal element to it. I'm sure everything she writes is not the exact same, but I really liked her style for that. And then the final one, A Circle That Ever Returneth. This one was, in a lot of ways, the most unique one in the anthology. It was written in the second person, so the whole thing is directed as, you do this, you do that. You know, that kind of setup for it, and it worked super well for the concept of it. The conceit is that you have just been fired. You end up getting a new job at this recycling factory where you're basically sorting cans for a living, people seem like they're disappearing from the job, but then you forget that they ever worked there at all, and it just had a really interesting atmosphere and an interesting concept that I'd never seen done that way. And the fact that it was written in the second person, which you never see, was really fun too. So I'm probably also going to be picking up more Kevin Lucia stuff. I actually found something else on Kindle Unlimited that I have checked out, I guess is what you would call it, that I'm going to read of his too to see if I like his other stuff as well. That one will also be a short story anthology, so probably another short story anthology review coming soon. Yeah, that was Other Voices and Other Tunes. And if you happen to have read this or any of these particular stories, because I don't know if they're published elsewhere too, let me know what your thoughts are. If you happen to go out and read it after this and want to come back and share your thoughts on these different stories, also welcome. You can get it on the Kindle Unlimited for free if you happen to have that service. So it's a great option while we're in quarantine to just read spooky stories. Anyways, I think that's all I've got to say about these for now. But I will talk to you guys soon, and this is the Umla Harper signing out.